Hello and welcome to this week's Hippie Hyena. So over here in the UK, we're about to enter our second lockdown because of the dreaded coronavirus. And you may not realise this, American friends, but we have our own fluffy blonde-haired idiot in charge of our country right now. Maybe slightly less stupid and maybe a little bit more articulate than Trump, but basically the same. Who knows, by the time you guys watch this video, maybe Trump will be out. Who knows? There's an American election going on right now, which I can't really cover because I don't really know which way it's going to go. Fingers crossed on that one, hey. Anyway, because we're going into a second lockdown, the government has decided Boris is going to address the people and explain exactly what all this is about.
In this country, alas, as across much of Europe.
As across much of Europe, what a load of old bollocks. Not really. It's quite a lot worse in Britain than most of Europe, largely because of how badly you guys have handled it. So don't, that was obviously placed in there as a sort of subtle attempt to normalise the situation here, when the situation here is kind of really quite bad, and bad because of pretty much directly your actions.
The virus is spreading even faster than the reasonable worst-case scenario.
And why do you think that is? I really think that, the right wing likes to call the coronavirus the China virus, but I think it could much more accurately be called the right wing virus. I mean, you can basically track countries and how well they're doing based on how left wing or right wing their governments are, can't you? I don't know if you've noticed this, but the left wing countries tend to be doing a lot better, and the right wing countries tend to be doing a lot worse. And this isn't a coincidence. It's because on a kind of philosophical level, a matter of principle, the right wing don't like using public funds for public good. They like siphoning off those funds and giving them to their cronies. And what part of protecting people against the coronavirus helps them do that? Basically, it doesn't. So they're kind of not interested worldwide. Whereas left-wing governments, their whole thing is helping out the people with public money. I mean, that's really what the public money is for, right? That's why we give taxes or anything in the first place, so that we can receive some kind of public good from it. And so look across the world. It's basically a testing ground for what happens under right-wing and left-wing governments. And under right-wing governments, what you get is lots and lots of death. Always has been, always will be.
Of our scientific advisors, whose models, as you've just seen, now suggest that unless we act, we could see deaths in this country running at several thousand a day, a peak of mortality, alas, bigger than the one we saw in April.
And yet another reason why left-wing governments tend to do better than right-wing governments, because the left-wing governments actually listen to science. Well, they listen to evidence, in general, which is something that the right-wing generally doesn't like to do because, well, for obvious reasons. It's because evidence shows that they're wrong and idiotic and incompetent. And rather than face that and sort of change their behaviour, attitudes, opinions, they'd rather just discount the evidence and live in a sort of bizarre fake news bubble. The scientists in this country, as they have in the States and pretty much every country, have been pretty clear on what is a responsible thing to do for a government to do during the time of this epidemic. And that's just basic things like quarantine off those who've got it, close the borders so people don't come in who've got the virus or leave who've got it, get people to wear masks, and quite simply track and trace is the most effective thing that we've got in our arsenal against the virus. The government has been told, as most governments worldwide have been told, exactly what they should do about this. And did they do it? Did they So it's absolutely no surprise that we're in this situation now. No surprise to anyone who's been paying attention. Of course.
And so now is the time to take action.
No, it isn't. The time to take action was about a year ago, or maybe even before that. Scientists have been warning of a pandemic up and coming for a very long time. And without properly funded National Health Service, without properly funded pandemic response teams, we're facing this virus basically unarmed. We're taking a knife to a gunfight. And here's the thing, a full-on proper lockdown with quarantining and track and trace, maybe for a month, could have have, fixed this. I mean, New Zealand fixed this. There are multiple countries worldwide that have fixed this effectively, but we didn't do that here. Why? Because there just wasn't the motivation for it. The government just didn't care. Boris Johnson just didn't care.
And from Thursday until the start of December, you must stay at home. You may only leave home for specific reasons, including for education, for work. Let's say if you cannot work from home.
So it's not a proper lockdown then, is it? Because children are the biggest spreaders of this disease. They may not be directly affected, but they can be carriers. And they're going to spread it everywhere. Unless you shut down schools, it's not a lockdown. It's totally pointless. So what we've got is basically the worst of both worlds. We can't have a Christmas, we can't have our birthdays, we've skipped Halloween, we're skipping Bonfire Night, all of our festivals, because this is the most important time of the British year for our traditional festivals. But no, we've got to miss out on all of them. We can't see our parents, we can't see our grandparents, but we can see our bosses, and we can see our teachers if we're young enough. Why? It's because this is a lockdown in name only. It's just lip service. It's a token effort to make it look like they're doing something, as long as that something doesn't affect their bottom line, which is they want us to get back to work, because they see us as cattle. They see us as their possessions, and our only purpose to them is to keep the economy moving and keep the gears of capitalism turning so that they can line their fat, greasy profits while we all die in squalor. That's what this is about. It's a clear choice. It's a choice between keeping our citizenry alive or keeping their pockets lined. It's as simple as that. And anyone who tries to dress it up as something more, it's more complicated that. No, it's not. It's really simple. They would rather make a bit more profit on the guarantee that thousands of us will die than they would just on principle, because in the long run they'll in fact lose money by not doing a proper lockdown in the long run. But it's just the principle of it for them. They're specifically doing it because it's evil. Because it's evil. Understand this. Because they believe in the principle that they cannot let us have 1 month's paid holiday to save our lives. They cannot take a tiny fractional hit to their profit margin for 1 month out of a whole year to save thousands of people's lives. And they'd rather lose money in the long run than they would allow that to happen. That's how dark and evil this is.
For exercise and recreation outdoors with your household or on your own, with one person from another household, for medical reasons, appointments, and to escape injury or harm, to shop for food and essentials.
Anything that keeps the wheels of commerce turning. That's what those exceptions have in common. There's no scientific rationale for this, no ethical rationale for this, no compassionate rationale. There is no rationale other than the satanic worship of money.
Workplaces should stay open where people can't work from home, for example, in the construction and manufacturing sectors.
Why? It's because these are jobs traditionally held by the working classes, and from the Tory perspective, f*** them. Let them be infected and die off in vast numbers. That's essentially what Boris is saying here. If you're a blue-collar worker, Boris Johnson and the Conservative Party don't care about you. They'd rather that you died than stopped working. They'd rather that you caught the virus and spread it to your loved ones, and they died, than you stopped working. Because from their perspective, you're subhuman. This is class warfare. This is literal class warfare. This is genocide.
I'm under no illusions about how difficult this will be for businesses which have already had to endure such hardship this year, and I'm truly, truly sorry.
Truly sorry for the businesses. What about the human cost? What about the thousands and thousands of unnecessary deaths caused by the policies of a government that, quite frankly, doesn't care if they live or die? Because people that care if other people live or die tend to do something about it, within the time that it is useful to do, that it would still do anything. People who care about whether people live or die don't keep doing the things which has led to those people's deaths in the first place.
Christmas is going to be different this year, perhaps very different, but it's my sincere hope and belief that by taking tough action now, we can allow families across the country to be together.
Well, your sincere hope and belief is just nonsense. It just literally means absolutely nothing when you're not willing to actually do anything to make that pie-in-the-sky hope possibly come true. Yes, doing something, a strict lockdown measure now, would probably be effective enough to allow us to have a relatively normal Christmas or holiday season for those people who don't necessarily celebrate Christmas. But here's the thing, what you're putting into place is not a strict lockdown. It's not even a goddamn lockdown, because you're allowing people to continue going to construction sites. You're allowing all of the nation's children to go back to school. It's just a meaningless exercise in PR, meaning that by the time Christmas comes around, if you allow people to go home to their families on Christmas, it's going to be grossly irresponsible to do so. And you're putting people into that position, of, do I miss Christmas this year, or do I put my family at risk? That's the sort of horrific decisions that people are going to have to be making directly as a result of your unbelievable selfishness, of just the staggering amounts of greed, disgusting gluttony of these scumbag Tories. But hey, Britain had the choice to vote in an alternative, a true alternative in the last election, and instead they opted for this shower of total cunts. And as somebody who fought on the side of good in that last election, I've got to fight the part of myself that wants to say, I told you so. And not only that, you deserve this. And I've got to keep focused on the idea that there are large numbers of people who didn't vote for this. It's tough times, my comrades. And it's important in these tough times to remember solidarity. And what I mean by that is find some way to spend time with those that you love, even if it's not physically, and keep yourself and those you care about, and even those you don't, as safe as you can. Because God knows this government is not going to help, and essentially we've been left to fend for ourselves. Godspeed and happy holidays.